Pittsburgh Steelers training camp is here. The players report today, Wednesday, July the 23rd, and training camp practice is open to the public starting at St. Vincent College in Latrobe on Thursday. Welcome in. My name is Mark Bergin on behalf of the Arthur Moats Experience. And on today's episode, I'm going to go through the top storylines for the Pittsburgh Steelers now that training camp is here. And we start with, can the Steelers finally win a playoff game? You got to go back to January 15th of 2017. It's the big question going into this season, given all of the acquisitions that the Steelers have made in the offseason, including 41-year-old Aaron Rodgers, Darius Slay, DK Metcalf, Jalen Ramsey. Can that help the Steelers achieve playoff success for the first time in almost a decade now? Scary to think about that. But Rodgers at the age of 41, can he find the fountain of youth? Can he kind of revert to form of what we saw in Green Bay? Coming off a 5-12 season with the New York Jets, and it'll be his second season back from that Achilles injury. But Rodgers represents 5 starting quarterbacks in the past 5 years for the Pittsburgh Steelers, with Ben Roethlisberger, then Mitch Trubisky, then Kenny Pickett. We had Justin Fields and Russell Wilson a season ago. Now we're going to have Aaron Rodgers. So 5 different starting quarterbacks in week 1 in the past 5 seasons for the Steelers. And really, I know you got all the draft picks in next year's draft. I know the draft is next year in Pittsburgh, but Mike Tomlin is under contract through the 2027 season. General manager Omar Khan is under contract through 2028. So there's a lot riding on this season, given all the veteran players that the Steelers have and have acquired this offseason. That's the big one, is can you finally win a playoff game, let alone winning the Super Bowl? But you got to win one before you can even advance to a conference championship game. That's my biggest question going in. My second biggest storyline is, what are the Steelers doing at wide receiver 2? And I think that this is a little bit of a trick question, because I think the depth that Pittsburgh has at the tight end position with Pat Freiermuth, he can effectively serve as your wide receiver 2, even though DK Metcalf is your clear-cut wide receiver 1. But is it Calvin Austin III, who's entering a contract season? Roman Wilson in year 2 didn't play much as a rookie, hardly at all, due to injuries. Robert Woods, your free agent acquisition. Scotty Miller, Ben Skroenek as well, more of a special teams player. The Steelers have a lot of depth at tight end. Freiermuth, Jonnu Smith, Darnell Washington, Connor Hayward. I think that they'll use their personnel and their tight ends as you would see other systems use receivers. I think you'll see a lot of multi-tight end sets. That's the approach I would take. And remember, there's going to be other teams that cut veteran players, so perhaps Pittsburgh could go get a wide receiver 2 cheap on an open market, depending on what happens with other teams' training camps and preseasons. But if DK Metcalf goes down, I'm just warning you right now, I'm not wishing injury upon any player. DK Metcalf has stayed relatively healthy in his pro career. But he's your clear-cut number 1. I don't really know who the Steelers' number 2 receiver. I guess if I had to pick one, Calvin Austin III would be it. But it's a huge question mark I have for the Steelers. I would have thought they have gone out to get somebody. I believe Amari Cooper's still out there, but keep an eye on that as we get into training camp and the preseason. What the Steelers are doing at wide receiver 2, huge question mark. Third biggest storyline is this: the 2 young guns you have at offensive tackle. Broderick Jones entering his 3rd year, now going to move over to left tackle. This is something that the Steelers wanted to do in 2024. Troy Fautanu coming back from a season-ending knee injury. He was limited to 1 regular season game in 2024. It's a big season for Broderick Jones, considering after this year, the Steelers are going to have to decide whether to pick up his 5th-year option. So they'll have to do that by May 1st of 2026. The 5th-year option would be for 2027. That's a huge, huge deal for the Steelers. And their performance, 2 first-round picks in Broderick Jones and Troy Fautanu, is going to be integral in keeping Aaron Rodgers upright, keeping him healthy, keeping him happy as a veteran quarterback. The Steelers have invested serious draft capital. But Broderick Jones, the 27 starts he's made in his NFL career, most of them have come at right tackle. And remember, He actually got benched for Troy Fautanu. They were going to start Fautanu at right tackle and continue starting Dan Moore Jr. at left tackle a season ago. Fautanu gets hurt. Jones goes back in as the team starting right tackle. But this is huge. Their development, given the draft capital that the Steelers have spent on those two players, they're both young players. Are there going to be any growing pains at all? Are they going to be good to go, ready to roll right from the jump, considering, again, they were both first-round picks? This is huge, and honestly, it's something absolutely to monitor. Training camp, preseason, first few weeks of the regular season. How Troy Fautanu comes, how he performs coming back from that knee injury at right tackle, and then Broderick Jones moving over to left tackle, to where the Steelers were okay letting Dan Moore Jr. go in free agency. Signed a huge deal with the Titans, and that huge contract, like, look, Dan Moore Jr. has been serviceable. He stayed healthy, but that shows the premium that you're going to have to pay. If I had to predict, I would think that, just given the positional value of left tackles in the NFL, that even if Broderick Jones is average, I would expect the Steelers to pick up his fifth-year option for the 2027 season. But a lot of that is going to be contingent upon how he performs this upcoming season in 2025. Okay, next storyline, number 4, how the Steelers will use their defensive backs given the acquisition of Jalen Ramsey. Again, I've mentioned this before in the show where I talked about the Steelers trade to get Jalen Ramsey, but you could play Ramsey and Porter as your outside corners in your base 3-4 defense, but you're only in your base defense about 25% of the defensive snaps, given the fact that a lot of NFL teams like to spread it out, run shotgun formations with multi-wide receivers. So if that happens, how you move Ramsey around? Do you put him in the nickel and then put Darius Slay on the outside, where you've got your 3 DBs in Slay, Joey Porter Jr., and Jalen Ramsey? Do you move Ramsey to safety opposite Deshaun Elliott and play Beanie Bishop in the slot with Slay and Joey Porter Jr.? Do you say, let's go Juan Thornhill and Deshaun Elliott as your safeties with Ramsey, with Joey Porter Jr., how Slay gets in the mix? Slay's on a 1-year contract. He's 34. He's coming off a Super Bowl title. So how the Steelers mix and match their DBs, considering they've got a lot of talent. Ramsey's as good a DB as there is in the league. He might not be quite what he was, say, with the Rams or the Jaguars, but Ramsey's won everywhere he's gone, and he's like a Swiss Army knife, to where he has positional versatility. How that reflects in the rest of the secondary is something absolutely to watch going into training camp and preseason. I'm really excited about that, and the Steelers are certainly paying a hefty amount for Ramsey. Darius Slay's on a $10 million contract. Joey Porter Jr. going into his 3rd season as well, coming off a year where he was the most penalized corner in the NFL. There's a lot of excitement, though, because the Steelers DB should be able to shut down the likes of, okay, let's look across the division against Cincinnati. The duo of Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Certainly the Steelers have the players to match up with that duo, and with a lot of the prolific passing attacks in the AFC. How the Steelers use their DBs, man, I get excited about that. Number 5, I got the running back rotation. So I think Jaylen Warren gets the first crack at it, but he's never been an every down back. That's why the Steelers spend a draft pick and select Caleb Johnson out of Iowa. And then, speaking of Super Bowl winners, Kenneth Gainwell as well, going to be on a 1-year deal. He's been a solid back in the NFL as well. What type of rotation does this look like? I think Johnson's certainly a different runner than Warren. And Gainwell, are you going to ride the hot hand? What the Steelers do? Again, I think Jaylen Warren gets first crack, but the thing with Najee Harris, love him or hate him, is he stayed healthy and he didn't fumble the ball. And that bruising style, that between the tackle style running back, is what he brought to the table versus the quickness Jaylen Warren has as a running back. Can they stay healthy? Can they hang on to the football? Can they be good in pass protection? Can they be good as a pass catcher out of the backfield? How the Steelers utilize their running backs. How much do they want to put on Caleb Johnson early on, considering he is coming into the NFL as a rookie? Something to keep an eye on for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Number 6, I've got TJ Watt. And how will he perform after getting his huge contract extension? Highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history on a per annual basis. And the last time TJ Watt got a huge contract extension. On the eve of the 2021 season, he went on to win Defensive Player of the Year. Could history repeat itself? Something to keep an eye on there. But that was a huge question entering training camp, and the Steelers get a deal done with Watt in advance of training camp, so they don't have that looming over their heads, and they could focus on the here and now with this season. It adds to what is the highest paid defense in the NFL. You've got to have elite level production for how much money the Steelers are allocating to the defensive side of the football. But the last time that this happened, TJ Watt went on and won NFL Defensive Player of the Year. Could history repeat itself? Keep an eye on that. I want to backtrack here really quickly. One more thing with the running back rotation. Cordero Patterson is also still on the roster at the age of 34. Will he make the 53-man roster? Something to keep an eye on with the running backs. I do want to make mention of that. Speaking of rotations, at number 7, I've got the linebacker position. So you know Patrick Queen's going to start. Peyton Wilson looked good as a rookie, but Cole Holcomb's coming back as well. Got Malik Harrison in the mix. You've got Carson Bruner in the mix as well. So I would imagine Queen and Wilson get the first crack, but how does Cole Holcomb work his way back from injury? How does he get into the rotation? Should be exciting. You've obviously got Mark Robinson as well, but I think you know who the first 2 linebackers will be in Queen and Wilson, but what does that mean for the rest of the linebackers? That was something that I will be watching, and Cole Holcomb was a starter for the Steelers, so could he challenge Wilson for that other inside linebacker position? That is something I'll be watching. Will Howard's development. So I've said this before when the Steelers drafted Will Howard, really when they acquired Aaron Rodgers, could there be a competition for the backup quarterback spot? I wouldn't do this because Mason Rudolph has a winning record as a starting quarterback. I know that wins and losses aren't always incumbent upon the quarterback. Some people don't think that it's a quarterback stat. Mason Rudolph has started a playoff game. He just has a lot more experience to this point in his career versus Will Howard, who's coming in as a rookie. But how Will Howard performs is important for a few different reasons. Could there be some conversation about a quarterback competition for the backup position behind Rodgers? But really, I more so look at this as, could Will Howard can be considered a candidate in any capacity next season for the Pittsburgh Steelers to even be a backup or potentially be a starter? His development's going to be important, but he's going to learn from 2 veteran players in Aaron Rodgers, in Mason Rudolph. I fully expect Will Howard to be the 3rd quarterback, but I get excited with a new quarterback in Pittsburgh, something that the Steelers have been trying to get right since Ben Roethlisberger retired. So keep an eye on that. That's going to be exciting, and you get some live game reps, you get some live game action. Now, the defenses, the coverages, the stunts, the fronts are all very vanilla when it comes to the NFL preseason, but you can't simulate that live game action. Even in practice, you still don't get that same game speed as you do compared to practice, compared to training camp. So Will Howard's development is going to be fun. He should get plenty of opportunities this preseason in the 3 preseason games that the Steelers will play. And remember, too, I know Rudolph coming off 1-4 as a starter in Tennessee, but he helped salvage the Steelers season in 2023. What that looks like, how he performs with Arthur Smith, because remember, Arthur Smith wasn't here when Mason Rudolph was last in a Steelers uniform. I'm excited to see what the quarterbacks look like, even beyond Aaron Rodgers. Will Howard, the Steelers rookie. I know that there's excitement there. All right, I got 2 other things. The punter position. Cameron Johnston had a season-ending knee injury in week 1 of the 2024 season. He is due back. Some say it's Cameron Johnston. Some say it's Bill Burr's doppelganger. I want to point this out, though. I think Johnston is a better punter than Corliss Waitman. But there's more than just punting the football when it comes to the specialist's position of punting in the NFL. Chris Boswell is coming off his best season as a pro. He was an all-pro kicker a year ago. The place holding is very important. Boswell missed 3 field goals for the entire 2024 season. 2 of those were from 50 yards plus. And he went 13 of 15 from 50 yards plus, so he is awfully good. It's not just Cameron Johnston's punting ability. Will that have any impact on the Steelers field goal game. Christian Kuntz, the long snapper, to the placeholder, whether it's Johnston, Corliss Waitman did a very nice job for the Steelers a year ago, to Boswell actually kicking it through the uprights and getting 3. When the Steelers crossed the 50-yard line, Boswell was almost automatic a year ago. And for an offense that really, really struggled and where points are premium, that's going to be equally as important. So Cameron Johnston coming back, assuming he wins this competition between Corliss Waitman, the placeholding is what I am looking at when it comes to which guy gets the roster spot as the Steelers punter. Something to keep an eye on. I know we're in the weeds here. One other thing I want to mention is the Steelers entering a contract season. Many more players on the offensive side of the ball compared to the defensive side of the ball. On offense, Aaron Rodgers, Jaylen Warren, Isaiah Seumalo, veteran left guard, Calvin Austin III, Cordero Patterson, Kenneth Gainwell, and Robert Woods. On defense, you've got Darius Slay, Miles Killebrew, Juan Thornhill, DeMarvin Leal, Isaiah Loudermilk, and James Pierre. Assuming you make the roster from the players that I listed, which of those players goes and balls out and gets the bag, whether it's from Pittsburgh or another team next offseason? Keep an eye on that. Let me give you a quick recap, and I'll go ahead and sign off here for my top training camp stories. Really, the Steelers' playoff drought with all the acquisition of veteran players that they made. Wide receiver 2, huge question mark. The 2 young guns, Troy Fautanu at right tackle, Broderick Jones at left tackle, in their development. How the Steelers will use their DBs given the acquisition of Jalen Ramsey. What does the running back rotation look like? How TJ Watt performs after receiving a huge contract extension. What the inside linebacker rotation looks like. Will Howard's development as a quarterback. The punter battle between Cameron Johnston and Corliss Waitman. And the Pittsburgh Steelers entering the final years of their contract. Enjoy the start of training camp. If you're in Latrobe, let us know. Weigh in the Yinzer chat in the comments if there are any other storylines that I failed to mention or I left out that you thought should have made this list. Leave it in the chat. Hit that subscribe button. Hit that like button as well. It helps us out a ton. My name is Mark Bergin. Enjoy the start of training camp. Preseason is almost here. August 9th for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Their preseason opener. So that will be here in the coming weeks. I'm excited to talk with Arthur Moats as well in the coming weeks as well. But I'll go ahead and sign off here. My name is Mark Bergin, signing off on behalf of the Arthur Moats Experience.